It's a topic a lot of communities face, policing, the use of force, bias. A lot of people have a strong sentiment about it, but there is now a nationwide effort to unite, not divide, using the power of faith. It's Faith and Blue Weekend, which is a 4-day movement of locally organized community and officer engagement, touted as the nation's largest annual collaborative policing initiative. Hundreds of events planned across all 50 states focused on nonviolent social change. Reverend Markel Hutchins is the visionary behind Faith and Blue Weekend. He's known for his activism, and you actually were mentored by icons who worked closely with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which I'm sure colors your approach to this. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So tell us a little bit more about the cause of Faith and Blue. What does faith have to do with policing?
Well, faith is a thing that binds us all together despite whatever differences we might have. We are a nation of people who have faith not only in the divine, but faith in one another. And there's never been a movement in the history of this country that was not anchored in the faith-based community. So if you go from the abolition movement to the civil rights movement and everything in between, our churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, et cetera, have always been a source of social change in this country.
I was talking with somebody, it's just so funny that we're discussing this, but just yesterday about how a lot of people, even those of faith, don't know the history of faith and religion in the United States and how it's led to different important historical events and movements. But tell us a little bit about what's going to happen. Are we going to see, officers and community leaders praying together? Is there an interfaith service? What types of activities will you hold?
So, Adrienne, in 2020, when we were dealing with, as a nation, the aftermath of George Floyd and so many other police-involved tragedies, when I started to see people on different sides of the street yelling and screaming messages at one another, I knew we needed to do something distinctly different. We've never progressed as a nation when we separate or segregate ourselves from one another. So in collaboration with every major national law enforcement organization in this country, we created National Faith and Blue Weekend, not for religious purposes, but faith-based organizations constitute the largest body of volunteers in this country. Yeah. They should be a force for good and uniting police and communities. So over the course of the next 4 days, there will be all types of events, thousands of activities that are designed to build bridges between cops and communities, both to reduce crime in local communities as well as build mutual respect between officers and residents.
Yeah, faith organizations, churches, synagogues, and the like have always had a huge part to play in volunteerism. And, there are a lot of people, though, I'm curious, who think that getting angry is justified and productive. Even all these years later, you mentioned George Floyd and the 2020 unrest. How do you reach out to communities where they believe that nonviolent social change is just not effective enough?
The truth is, I am a passionate advocate for civil and human rights. You mentioned it earlier. I had the good fortune of being mentored by most of the civil rights icons that worked with Dr. King, including his wife, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, and so many others. But the thing that made the civil rights movement successful is that they were strategic, they were intentional, they were operating from a place of love, causing America to live up to her highest ideals. Unfortunately, a lot of the protests, while understandable, that we've seen over the last several years have not been curative. What we're doing with Faith and Blue Weekend is raising the voice of the majority of the American people who certainly understand that there's some need for reforms in policy and procedures in law enforcement, but the greatest need for reform is in relationship. What killed George Floyd and Tyree Nichols and so many other people who have died at the hands of police is the police officers did not feel connected to the humanity of the people that they were policing. So over the course of Faith and Blue Weekend, very strategically, very intentionally, and by design, based on Dr. King's philosophy of nonviolent social change, we will cause people who may not see the world the same to come together in local communities in every state, in the largest cities and in the smallest communities. I encourage people to go to faithandblue.org, faithandblue.org, and find an event near you. Let's be the change that we want to see. It's no longer acceptable as a social change measure to simply curse the darkness. we have to light a candle. And that's what will happen in communities across this country over Faith and Blue Weekend.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.